Okay, this ain't the assignment. Okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to find this product. We've done that before. Okay, you got P1, P2, multiplication. Okay, so you just got this 7x. Okay, so 7 to 2, 7 to negative 5. So I take the 7x, I multiply it to 2x, I multiply it by negative 5. So 7 times 2 is 14. Now there's two x's, so add the powers. It's 1 plus 1, that's 2. Okay. 7 times negative 5 is negative 35. X, if you don't have a power, you don't have to put 1, but if you want to put a power, put a 1. So we have x second and x. There is no constant here. So you have 14, and you have negative 35. Okay, now here, P1, P2. So you get your a negative 8x to 3 and a negative 2. To 3x, 3 is multiplied by x, then to negative 2. So it's going to be negative 24, then x I put a plus 1, and that's going to be 2. Negative 8 times negative 2 is 16. You put x. You don't have to put a power if it's not there, or if it is, you put a 1. Okay, so x to the second, then x. So you have negative 24, that's your x second, and then x is x to the first, so that'd be 16. Now here's what we're doing today. You're going to get from here back to the two parentheses. Okay, that's your answer. It sets you up for stuff later. Empty side. It's known as factoring. Factor out the GCF. Here's what GCF stands for. Greatest common factor. Okay? This is how you figure out the greatest common factor. You're going to underline those two things right there. It's always going to be 2 today. And you're going to write GCF equals. This is how you find the GCF in an algebra expression. You got to pay attention here. You check the final term for a variable. That means a letter. Okay. So you check on the end, and there's an X there, so you put X first. Then you check the first term, see if it's negative. Basically, the first term means the front. Is there a negative in front? No, there's not, so I do not have to put a negative. Then 12 and 6, okay? You find the GCF of the coefficients. The coefficients are the multipliers of the variable 12 and 6, okay? So you go, here's how you find this. You take the smaller of the two numbers, 6. Go to the 6th row and see if 12's there. Okay, 12 is certainly there, so this row, this 6, that's your GCF, 6x. Now after you get it, here's what you do. You make a space and then a parentheses. You put that GCF, you wrote down here, off into the space. Okay, this is your GCF, whatever that is goes here. Now you go up here and divide by 6x. So you're going to divide 12 by 6, and that's 2. Now after the 2, you got to divide the x to the second by the x. I showed you how to do that in the last video. You make a division line. X second means 2 x's. And then x on the bottom is just a single x. X doesn't have a power, so it's just a x. Cancel those, and you end up with an x on top. So you put x after your 2. Then you take negative 6 divided by 6, okay? That's a minus, so I divide it as a negative. And it's negative 1, so if it's negative 1, I put negative 1. And then x divided by x, so you just put x, x. They cancel, so you don't put x on the 1. That's your answer, okay? Put a times dot between them, okay? Next one. Negative 12x to the 5th power plus 8x, okay? GCF. So here's how to find the GCF. Check the final term for a letter. There's a letter there, so I put it. You check the first term, that means in front. for the negative, and this time the negative's there. So what I do is I put a negative right here. Don't put it right against the x. Leave some space, because now you got to find the number for the 12 and the 8. Find the GCF of the coefficients. So 12 and 8, well, 8's the smaller of the two. I look in the 8 row, but 12's not there. So now I move up the table and find 8. Here's 8 and there's 12. So that's in the 4th row. So 4 is the GCF, negative 4x. Okay, so you need to put that negative 4x on this line here. Now you go up and divide both of these by negative 4x. So negative 12 divided by negative 4 is positive 3. Now to divide your x's, x to the 5th divided by x to the 5th means 5 x's. And then x doesn't have a power, so it would just be a single x. Cancel, and you end up with 4 x's, so it's x to the 4th power. Then I take positive 8 divided by negative 4. That's negative 2, so negative 2, and then x divided by x. Cancels, so we don't put anything on the 2. There's the answer. Okay, 15x to the 3rd power plus 20x. GCF, okay, greatest common factor. Should check the final term for a variable, and it's there, okay. So I put x down, check the first term for a negative. It is not there, so I do not put a negative. 15 and 20, find the G, those are your coefficients, 15 and 20. They're the multiplying numbers of the x's. So 15, there's a 15 but no 20, so I work my way up, okay. Where do I see 15 again? Right here, 15 and 20, it's 5, okay. So 5x is the GCF. You're not going to see me put x to the first. I don't want you doing that starting today. So GCF, you put 5x here. Now you go up and divide both of these by the 5x. You're doing the opposite of the rainbows here, or the distributive property. 15 divided by 5 is 3. Now we have to divide the x to the 3rd by the x. So x to the 3rd means 3 x's, and then x on the bottom. You cancel there, and how many x's do you have left on the top? You have 2, so it's x to the 2 power. Positive 20 divided by 5 is positive 4, okay? And then x divided by x just cancels, so we do not put an x on the 4. I don't want to see you putting the x on that 4. Okay. Next one, negative 64x to the 2nd power minus 16x. GCF. Check your final term for the letter, and there's a letter there. At the end, you put x. Check the end for a letter. Check the front for a negative, and there's a negative there, okay? So if there's a negative, we put a negative, but not right against the x. You leave yourself some space. Now find the GCF of the coefficients, 64 and 16. So I go to the 16 row, and 64 is there with it, so it would be 16. Okay, so space, parentheses, GCF. And you put the negative 16x out here. So when you put it out here, you're going up top and dividing by negative 16x. So I take negative 64 divided by negative 16, and that's going to be 4. Now, after the 4, you have to divide the x's to the 2nd by the x. 2 x's divided by an x. So that would leave me with an x with the 4. If the only one I have, it's 1, I'm not going to put the first power if it's 1. Then negative 16 divided by negative 16, and that's 1. It's positive 1, so I put plus 1. Then dividing the x by the x just cancels it completely, and I do not put x on the negative, on the 1. Done. Okay, 3x to the 4th power plus 16x, okay? So GCF, you check the end for the variable. It's there. You check the front for a negative. It's not there, so don't put a negative. Then 3 and 16. So here's 3, there's no 16. Here's 3, here's 16, so it would be 1. 1x is the GCF. So you factor out your 1x, then you go up and divide by 1x. 3 divided by 1 is 3. Now we have to divide the x to the 4th by x. So that's x, 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 x for 4. And then just a single x on the bottom. You have 3 x's, so x to the 3rd. Because really that's a 1 power, so it'd just be 1x, okay? 16 divided by 1 is 16. I'll start showing that. So the x's are both to the 1 power, so we just draw a single x, and they're canceled completely. So there we go. Okay, now the negative 5x to the 2nd minus 5x, okay? So GCF. Check your last term for a letter, it's there, so x. Check the front of the problem for a negative, it's there, so we put a negative. Now between the negative and the x. Now what if they're the same number, 5 and 5? Well, then the GCF's 5. It's not 1, it's 5 when they're the same number, like that. I don't need to look at my chart to see that. So GCF, put your negative 5x out, and then you're going to divide by negative 5x. So negative 5 divided by negative 5 is positive 1. Then I divide the x to the 2nd by the x to the 1. So it's 2 x's and then a single x. Well, that's going to leave me with an x on the 1. Then negative 5 divided by negative 5 is positive 1. Then I divide the x by the x. They'd both be to the 1 power, so it's just a single x on top and bottom, and they cancel completely, so I do not put an x. Okay, 10x to the 2nd plus 15x, okay? You do have a letter at the end. Put it. You don't have the negative in front, so this will not be a negative. And then 10 and 10 would just be 10. So outside I put 10x. Now I go up and divide by 10x. So 10 divided by 10 is 1, and then I have to divide the x to the 2nd by the x to the 1. So it's 2 x's and then 1 x on bottom. So I cancel, that leaves me with x on top. Okay. 10 divided by 10 is positive 1. Put the positive sign there, please. X divided by x. Remember, it's a 1 and a 1, so it's just a single x on each side. They cancel completely, so I do not put x on that 1. Okay, 20x to the 2nd plus 20x. GCF. There's a variable at the end. Okay. I'm not seeing a negative in front, so I don't put a negative. And then the coefficients, well, the coefficients are the same, so then 20 is automatically the GCF. Okay, so 20x comes out here, whatever comes from here goes over here. Then we divide by 20x. 20 divided by 20 is 1. Then you have to divide the x to the 2nd by the x. That's 2 x's divided by another x. x1. Okay. We end up with an x factor. 20 divided by 20 is 1, so positive 1. And then divide the x by the x. They're both to the 1 power. They cancel completely, and I don't put anything there. So 20x times 1x plus 1. Okay, negative 4x to the 2nd plus 20x. There's a letter at the end, and there's a negative in the front, so we need to insert a negative there. 4 and 20, those are your coefficients. So here's 4, here's 20, they're in row 4, so it'd be negative 4x. So you put the negative 4x right there. So I'm dividing negative 4 by negative 4, that's 1. Then I need to divide my x to the second by the x. So that's at 2 x's on top, and then just a single x on bottom. So we still have that x on top, so I attach it to the 1. Then I go to my next division line. 20 divided by negative 4 is negative 5, so I put that as negative 5 or minus 5. And these x's are both to the 1, so it's just going to be a cancel completely. The x factors cancel right there. Okay, negative 6x to the second power plus 21x, so GCF. Definitely have my letter. And the front has a negative, so you need to insert a negative. 6 and 21. So I look at row 6, I don't see 21, so I move up the chart, 6, 21, that would be the third row. So 3, negative 3. GCF is the highest number you can divide those by without coming up with a decimal. So then you go up and divide by negative 3x. So that would be positive 2. The x's need to be divided. X second is 2 x's. And this x down here is to the first, so it'd just be 1. And then I have an x still on the 2. Positive 21 divided by negative 3 is negative 7. And then you divide your x's, they would both be to the first power. They cancel completely then, and we do not put an x then on the 7. Okay, negative 3x to the second minus 6x. You have a letter at the end. You have a negative in the front, so you insert a negative, but you leave some space for the coefficient GCF. Now the coefficients in the problem are 3 and 6, so here's 3's row, 6 is a multiple of 3, so 3 would be the GCF, negative 3x. Okay, so I factor out negative 3x. And then I divide, so that's going to be positive 1. X second divided by x, that's 2 x's, then x on bottom, so it's x, 1x. Then I'm dividing negative 6 by negative 3. The minus in front of it means it has a negative value, and it's positive 2. So I put positive plus 2. And the x's, okay? So x cancels completely, and it's just 2 then. Okay, negative 20x to the second power plus 30x, GCF. X, you got. You have the negative, and the front is negative, so I insert a negative into the GCF. Remember, if the front of the whole thing is negative, then we insert a negative. Then 20 and 30 are my coefficients. So here's 20, but there's not 30, so they can't be divided by 20. Okay. Here's 20 and 30, so they'll both, the highest factor they can both be divisible by is 10. So negative 10x. So I space out negative 10x, and you go divide by negative 10x. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, it's 2. And I divide the x to the second by the x to the 1. So 2 x's and then a single x. So I have an x there. Positive 30 divided by negative 3. A positive divided by a negative is a negative. 30 divided by 10 is 3. And these x's are both 1 powers, so it's just a single x divided by a single x, which means just cancels the variables. Okay. Next up, negative 10x to the second power plus 25x. Okay, so GCF, you have the letter at the end, you have a negative in the front, so you insert the negative. 10 and 25. So 25 is not in the 10th row, so the 10 is not a factor of both. 10, 25, so they're both divisible by 5. So we put the negative 5x out here, and then we go up and divide each of these by negative 5x. So a negative divided by negative is a positive 2, and the x second divided by the x, that's an x to the first, cancel them, and x, we place the remaining x on the 2. Then 25 divided by negative 5 is negative 5, so I put minus 5. Negative 5 means minus 5. Then, okay, x cancels completely, and there I have it. Okay, next problem, 8x to the second power plus 4x, GCF. Do you have a letter in the end? Yes. Do you have a negative in the front? Nope, so no negative. 8 and 4. So here's 4. 8's and 4, a multiple of 4, so 4 would be the greatest common factor, 4x. So I put the 4 with its x factor here, and then I go up and divide by 4x. So 8 divided by 4 is 2, then you need to divide the x to the second by the x. So x second, x first. So that would be an x left over. 4 divided by 4 is 1, it's positive 1. Then x first by x first, so that's an x divided by an x, which cancels. That's 1. In case you haven't figured it out, if the x's have the same exponent, they will just cancel. If they have different, they won't. You'll have something left over. Okay, 4x to the second power plus 40x. You have a variable. You do not have the negative, and then 4 and 40. So there's 4, there's 40, so it's 4. So 4x. Then you go up and divide by that 4x, both of them. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. X second divided by x to the first, so that's 2. This is how you divide variables. You have an x left over. 40 divided by 4 is 10. It's positive, so I need to see a positive symbol. And then x1, x1, so it's x, x. There's cancel. It's done. Okay, negative 36x to the second power plus 24x, so GCF. You have a letter. The front is, remember, check for the final term for a letter, check the first term for a negative. The negative's there, I insert it. 36 and 24, so here's 24, I'm not seeing 36, so I move up and find, here's 24 again, 36 with it, so 12 would be the greatest common factor. So you divide these by negative 12x, you put that in your GCF line, and then you go up and divide everything in the expression by negative 12x. So negative 36 divided by negative 12 is positive 3, and then I have to divide the x to the second by the x to the first, and I have x. A positive 24 divided by a negative 12 is a negative 2, so I put minus 2. Now the x's, 1, 1, just a single x divided by a single x, those cancel. There we have it. Blank page, 2 on the back side, then I'm done. 20x to the second power plus 40x, greatest common factor. First off, you see what you have an x in the end. You do not have a negative sign in the front, okay? Then 20 and 40. So here's 20, here's 40, so it'd be 20. Okay, so 20x goes here. Then I go and divide each of these by 20x. 20 divided by 20 is 1. I need to divide the x to the second by the x after that, which is x second divided by x to the first. Cancels it, and you have x. 40 divided by 20 is 2. It's positive 2. Then you need to divide your x variables. They're both to the 1, so that means they cancel completely. Okay, last problem. Negative 16x to the second power plus 80x. We do have a variable in the back. We do have a negative in the front. If you have a negative in front of the whole thing, you need to insert a negative. But give yourself space so you can put the number between the negative and the x. So 16 and 80. So here's a 16, and the 80 is there, so 16. Start in the lowest, in the lower numbers row, and work your way up. Okay, so negative 16x goes here, and then I go up and divide by negative 16x. Okay, so negative 16 divided by negative 16 is 1. Then I divide the x to the second by the x. I end up with an x remaining. Then I take a positive 80 and divide it by negative 16. I got negative 5, so I write negative 5. That means minus 5. And the x's, you got to divide the x to the first by the x to the first, which is easy to do because it just cancels completely. And there you go. Okay.